All righty. Hey, welcome everyone. It is a late night stream. We're going to be talking about logic and some effery that has been going around as of today. It's really going to be hard for me to explain the level of absolute moronic activity that I've seen recently in atheist groups. Oh, let me turn that off. That's my there we go. I am having a little bit of libations tonight. It is not a rum and coke night. However, I do have, check it out. I do got it. Jack, hey Brandon, look, Jack. Oh wait, here we go. Look, Brandon, and I've got Diet Coke because I don't do the sugary Coke, and I've also got a little bit of an E&J brandy going on tonight. So that's the drink of choice that I have. So I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna drink my cocktail as I explain very basic logic. So let me give you a rundown, basically, what happened here. And I'm sorry. Let me say hi to everybody first. We've got Brandon out there. We got Lawrence. We got Kimomaki. We got Alex. Hey, Alex. And they got Autistic Show. Perfect. So there's this group that I just started really posting in. They're called an argumentative atheist or something like that. And I like to test the waters out. I like to push buttons. People know that. But everything I put out is factually correct. It's been checked, double-checked, triple-checked. My arguments have stood the test of time for years. And some of the arguments that I put out were that, look, I have arguments that will literally trigger new atheist TM, which obviously we just know as black belief atheist. And I was like, okay, let's put this to the test in this group. Let's see if they get triggered by this or if it's more of an academic group that can actually understand what the hell I'm talking about. Fun fact, they didn't. And so I'll be going over one of my arguments that I talked about a few years ago. It's not my atheist semantic collapse argument. And it's not my WASP argument. It was a completely different argument dealing with the inconsistency of a logical system. But I had posted it, and I swear to God, about 50 people, one of them understood it. Just one. And then lately, there's another guy named Mark Roast. He understands it. But none of them had any understanding. And so I always get the responses back from people, which is, you're wrong, prove you're God. You don't know what you're talking about. Your logic is faulty. You committed fallacies. And they throw out a bunch of fallacies, none of which have any implication. And this is a trend that I've noticed for a very long time with Facebook atheists. It happens on Twitter. Don't get me wrong. It happens on YouTube. Don't get me wrong. But in Facebook groups, there seems to be this concentration of utter stupidity. They will argue the damnedest things. I can say for all of X, X equals X, and they'll tell me I'm wrong. And I'm not even joking. You think I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not. John Richards from the Atheist Alliance International, the one that destroyed that organization, he's argued that is wrong. Or at least he says it doesn't work ontologically. It's complete nonsense to him. But I posted in the group, and I was very cordial. I was very polite. I don't start off antagonistic. I don't start off being the a-holy pope of agnosticism that everybody knows I can be. And I was just trying to explain to them, okay, here's my argument. Can you show me why my argument's wrong? When you have an argument, you put an argument up for evaluation, right? You say, hey, look, here's my argument. Do you see any problems with this? You want it evaluated. And I've written things in my blog to explain to people very simplistic ways of trying to attack an argument, right? You're going to attack the premises. You're going to attack the validity to see if the conclusion falls from the premises. There's a lot of things that you can attack about an argument, right? Lawrence says, Steve, if it's worth anything, you've only helped my atheism. I understand the position better as well as logical reasoning. And I appreciate that because, he's working on his PhD. Lawrence is one smart dude. I mean, for a guy who's working on his PhD to say something like that to me really means a lot. And I'll give you a little fun fact. I've converted another one. What's so funny is I converted more people to atheism than I have agnosticism. Even though I am an agnostic, I'm not an atheist, as you know. But I have converted recently an atheist to an agnostic. I'm not going to say who it is because I'm going to let them do that. I don't want to steal their thunder. But a very, pretty prevalent guy in our community, not like super big YouTuber, but a good friend of mine. But even he's realized that the online atheist groups are toxic, and agnosticism probably does better suit his actual philosophical position. But yeah, I'm really happy when I have somebody say, hey, look, Steve, I'm more secure in my atheism now. Thank you for pointing out to me how I can justify atheism. Thank you for telling me, hey, look, if I tell a theist, this is why I believe there's no God, here are my justifications, and you're on solid epistemological grounding for that. I love that. Even though I may not make those same arguments, I definitely feel that the arguments for atheism can be seriously justified fairly easily if you know the topic sufficiently enough to even have a very basic structured argument of why you hold to the position there is no God. Now, I think the easiest approaches are to appeal to naturalism and theoretical virtues and things of that nature, but that takes a little bit of sussing out. But of course, somebody like Lawrence is obviously going to be able to do that. And I'm gonna show you my webpage here that for my argument. I don't have the group. I was blocked from the group. Shocking. I'll tell you what it is if you want to go look at it. I don't care. But I do have a screenshot from that group that was saying that basically that they were going to have a meeting on how to handle me. Even though everyone in that group didn't understand a goddamn thing I was saying, even though they did not even have the most modicum of basics down when it came to either logic, epistemology, or philosophy, they have the audacity to tell me how wrong I was, how wrong my logic was, and yet there was only one person who even attempted to use logic, and even he screwed the pooch on it. If you have something like I do not know P, which would be not KP, right? Because K is your predicate and P is your proposition. He just had not K. Now, I knew what he meant by it, right? Does not know. But you just don't have a negator on the predicate without a proposition. You need a predication for it. But let's see. He says, Lawrence says, I shared your paper in my server, and I think at least a couple people try to understand it, I think. Good. Thank you. I've had a lot more people read it. Still not assailed. Good luck. If anybody thinks they can assail my paper, to this day it stands. And I'm pretty damn sure that I don't know if Matt Dillahunty or Aaron Ra has read it. I doubt it, but I'm pretty sure that they're aware of it at this point. I mean, it's been out for like 2 years, right? It's got 3,000 views. Still in the top 4%. Odessa says, hi, Steve. What do you think is the importance of pointing out someone's misusing the label atheist? I don't think it's like misusing. I think that's a poor way to put it, right? I've always argued that you can use the term atheist any way you want. It is polysemous. Matter of fact, the funniest part was years ago, I used to tell people atheism is polysemous. And Lawrence and Chemo and some other people might remember this. Brandon does. And I got vilified for that. They're like, no, Steve, atheism is one thing. I mean, how many times do people argue Jacqueline Glenn and The Amazing Atheist and Steve Shives and all those atheists were like, atheism is only one thing, a lack of belief. And I'd be like, no, it's not. It's multiple things. That's one usage, which is a poor usage, but it generally is understood as the belief that God does not exist. And I kept explaining to people it's polysemous. They're like, you're an idiot, Steve. Now it's, oh, hey, Steve, it's polysemous. You're an idiot. I'm not even joking. It's like they finally caught up to where I was 4 or 5 years ago, and they still say I'm wrong, right? All right. So let me show you this poster. This was sent to me. Hopefully you can read this here. So this is from an admin, I guess. And he was congenial to me at first, but whatever. Oh, God, that's good. And he says, he reacted to somebody who said this, and they said, and apparently because I didn't agree with him, it seems he threw a hissy fit. Is this the look of somebody who throws a hissy fit? I'm a 53-year-old man who's been doing this for 10 years. Do you think that I will throw a hissy fit because somebody disagrees with me? Jesus fucking Christ. This is the internet. I cannot tell you how many people have disagreed with me over the last 10 years. You're nobody special to disagree with me. I got people in my audience, my live chatters that have disagreed with me on things. Some of them still do. Some of them very, very viciously, but I respect that. But we don't have an audience that has to agree with each other. But to think that you're somehow special, that if you disagree with me, that you're going to get some visceral emotional reaction from me to you, I think that's a little bit have hubris. I think that's a little bit narcissistic to think that because you somehow disagree with me, I'm going to have a hissy fit. And first of all, I don't even know who this person was. So it's like I have no emotional connection to this person. And then they said, and block the admin profiles. He is no longer a member of the group. And this is a fun fact. Absolute lie. I never blocked anybody in that group, admin or otherwise. Never blocked a mod, never blocked an admin, never blocked a member. So that right there tells you the dishonesty of these people. And I have come to the conclusion that atheists are just as willing to lie about their positions as any creationist, as any flat earther, as anybody that has an ideological position that is not grounded on facts, evidence, reason, and logic. They certainly have the propensity more to lie than somebody who has evidence behind them, reason behind them, and can articulate it in a way that's coherent, in a manner that provides a reasonable, measured argumentation. Thank you, James. James says, attaboy, Steve. Give him heaven. Ha ha. Spoken like a true Christian. James, man, I have got to get back on modern day debate. I know, look, I'm serious. I don't mean to blow you off, James. You probably think that, God, every time I invite Steve on the show, he blows me off. It's not you. It's me. It's not you, James. It is me. Every time you come to me for a debate on your channel, and he's got a big channel. I mean, his channel blew up. I just don't know the topic well enough. And you know me, if I'm going to debate something, it's going to be a topic that I at least have some understanding. The only time I really stepped out of my comfort zone is when I debated John Perry from Stated Clearly on my show, the Non Sequitur show. And it was on if DNA is a code. And I took the position that DNA is not a code. He took the position that DNA is a code. And I think most people thought it was either a draw or they sided with me. I think I did exceptionally well. I think he did well too, but I think I did better. But that was really something that was more outside my comfort zone, right? Because even though I know a little bit about biology, it's nothing that I have any kind of strong aptitude for. But I know what DNA is. But when I debate something, it's going to be something along the lines of epistemological standings. You know, if you want to argue whether coherence theory is better than, correspondence theory, if you want to argue that reliabilism is better than, justified true belief, maybe I might have something to say about those matters, right? But anyways, here's somebody, and they're reacting to argumentative atheist, which is the admin. So the moderators reacted to the admin who's saying this. So the admin is saying that I blocked admin profiles, which I'm telling you right now is an absolute lie. You don't have to believe me. I don't care. But anybody in that group will tell you that I didn't block anybody. The person who sent me this was like, yeah, I don't know what the hell they're talking about either. And they agree with me. They're like, you know what? I had to break open my book on intro to logic, and sure as shit, Steve, you're right. James says, we'd be amped to have you again, Stephen. Well, we need to find a subject. I don't know. I mean, what the hell? You guys got to help me. Yeah, that's the real James. I mean, I still want to debate something on the logical schema of agnostic atheist. And I know that Matt Dillahunty finally does agree with me on this. He hates me for it. He throws my name around like it's dirt. Every time you see Matt Dillahunty mention the words agnostic atheist, he has a scowl. He's like, I no longer use the term agnostic atheist. Fuck you, Steve. Kind of shit, right? But James can't find anybody that was willing to do so. He's looked. I've asked him. James cannot find somebody with sufficient qualifications to even argue that my positions on agnostic atheism is wrong, because they all seem to agree with me. And I'll go against a PhD. I don't give a shit, because this is like simple stuff. You don't need a PhD to understand first-year logic. Everything I talk about is first, maybe second-year stuff. Like, seriously, none of my stuff is that complicated. My paper, at most was second year, and even then, somebody said it was third year, and I'm like, no. They're like, yeah, blah blah blah. I'm like, to me, it's intro level. I don't even think it's first year. To me, it's intro level. That's how simple I think that stuff is. My paper was not complicated. It was first year logic, but it still has stood the test of time. So, anyways, it goes on. So this is where it gets good. This is where it gets real good. All right. He says, Steve McRae, do not appeal to our authority. Okay. Because I don't know who this person is, but your post, quote, is factually incorrect on its assertion, or your post is factually incorrect in its assertion that its content triggers atheists in great numbers. But it does. All my stuff triggers atheists in great numbers. My very post in that group triggered 50 people. 50 commenters, it looked like, if I had to guess. They were all triggered, all saying stupid shit. Like, your logic is wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, prove you're God. Oh, my God, this is stupid. Isn't there any moderation here? None of them took the time to go, holy shit, Steve's making a good point. His logic is correct. Maybe he's trying to explain something to us. And I saw one freaking person who wrote, this is what I think Steve is saying, blah, 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 blah. And I don't see a problem with that. I think he's right. And then somebody else went in there and did something and they got blocked. So it's like one person. They asked me, they said, hey, Steve, is this correct? Am I understanding you correctly? I'm like, bingo, you nailed it. They go on to say, in this group, which you have actually been in all for that long, there are many members who understand and explain to others that by a common definition, atheism is not the proposition to be either true or false. Well, no shit. We all understand colloquialisms. We all understand sensu lato usages. These are not stipulative definitions. They're just sensu lato. They're not prescriptive. They're descriptive. Nobody in their right fucking mind says that people don't use terms in a certain way. That's never been in the argument. The argument is which is more normative in academia. Which one should you use in order to be more parsimonious with the literature? Which one should you use that has the least amount of ambiguity, least amount of non-parsimony, least amount of rational way of understanding the topic? That's the arguments. And he says, atheism is not a position to be true or false because it is not a proposition and not making a claim. Well, we all know that's false, right? I mean, this is what they just assert that. They're like, oh, it's not a proposition, not a claim. Well, unfortunately, they're wrong. Anybody who's been to college on this topic knows they're wrong. But how do you explain to people that have never had any reading on the material that they're wrong? They're just regurgitating what they've heard on some cable access show. Atheism is not a claim. Well, Graham Oppie disagrees with them. Paul Draper disagrees with them. McCormick disagrees with them. Schellenberg disagrees with them. Burgess Jackson disagrees with them. Malik disagrees with them. Martin maybe hit or miss. But it doesn't matter. We all know that atheism is a claim that God does not exist. So they're just making this by fiat, saying it's not a claim. Okay, but you can do that. You're just wrong. But it doesn't change the facts that if you go to college and you learn about epistemology, you learn about philosophy of religion, it's going to be taught as the claim that God does not exist because the people that write the books are the experts on it. And Graham Oppie is one of the experts who writes the books for Cambridge and for Oxford, and he's made it very clear that this is how it's normally understood. Paul Draper in Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy has made it very clear this is how it's understood. And even said it wasn't until maybe a few decades ago where it was always understood this way. If you just said atheism or atheist, it was understood as the claim that there's no God. That's how it was understood until all these lack of belief atheists started coming up going, oh, no, it's not a claim. And they're like, okay, you can use it different, but let me show you why if you use it differently, what's going to be the ramifications, the implications of this, right? And then they go on to say, since you invited us in, does seem a good opportunity to chastise you for copy pasta. I mean, sure, I copied my own argument. I'm not going to deny that. It's on all my arguments are published on my blog, and two of them are on Academic EDU. But if I copy my own argument, is that copy pasta? I'm not like taking it from some other source. I'm taking it from myself. Okay. I don't think that's appropriate of the term copy pasta. Do you guys think if you copy, I mean, technically you can plagiarize your own self when you're writing a paper. That is true, technically. But if I cut and paste my own argument from my own source as an argument, is that copy pasta? No. But if somebody else takes my argument and runs with my argument, which they've done, and not give me proper attribution, that's copy pasta. They're just repeating it over and over again, and they're just not even understanding it. And then they go on to say, a self-important attitude, dismissiveness. What's that word? I'm squinting here because I got to read it on my monitor. Let me get close to this one. Here we go. A self-important attitude, dismissive being unnecessarily combative. The group is called Argumentative Atheist, and I'm being unnecessarily combative. Even though people told me, you're an idiot, Steve. Hey, prove you're God. Fuck off, Steve. Why is this guy in here? And I'm the one being unnecessarily combative because I will start off really polite, and then eventually I'm like, okay, you know what? Just show me what you got. You're wrong. Show me what you got. Show me your evidence. No evidence. Oh, show me your logic. No citations. Nothing but argumentium ad repetition. They just repeat it over again. Or argumentium ad dictionarium. Or argumentium ad lapis, argument to the stone. I've had that one person in there. Argumentium ad verecundium, which is appeal to fallacy, which I wasn't doing. They were. There's argumentium ad dictionarium. I said that one. Argumentium ad ignorantium. That's a big one. They love doing argumentium ad ignorantium because they don't understand what I'm talking about. So they think it must be wrong. So they're just ignorant of it. They'll say it's false because it hasn't been proven true, even though it has been proven true. My proofs are legit. They're valid and they're sound. Everybody who knows logic would tell you them this. but nobody was in there that knew logic. One person said, "Oh, I have a, you know, I'm formally educated in logic." Didn't show a bit of logic. Nothing. Didn't seem to know what a logically inconsistent system was. Hey, look, I'm an amateur, but if you tell me you have an expertise in a topic and you don't know what a first year student would know, I'm going to have an issue with that. I'll get to my live chat in a second now. In a second. One second. And then it says, this admin has in fact been considering starting a conversation with the others on the topic of how to handle the Steve McRae problem. I'm a problem now. It's funny because Joe and Dave over in Answers and Reasons, who I have the utmost respect for, wrote a blog years ago about me called the McRae virus. Go check it out. I'll put it in the video description later. And it was really good. Joe from Answers and Reasons was a lack-of-belief atheist at one time, believe it or not. And he started looking into my stuff, and he said, holy shit, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. This guy is making some really solid arguments. And as you guys know, Answers and Reason is probably one of the leading sites, one of the leading channels, one of the leading blogs against lack-of-belief atheism. And plus, they've got, Dave, who's just, I think he finished his PhD in philosophy. Yeah. Wait, I know he's got a master's degree, but I think he finished his PhD, if I'm not mistaken. So they have some backing of education, obviously. But I changed his position on that because he was willing to learn why my arguments were valid, why they were sound. And so, when people say they have to handle the Steve McRae problem, I'm like, well, why don't you handle the Steve McRae virus? Because the virus is infecting these lack-of-belief atheists that turn on them and turn and go, you know what? Shit, Steve is right. And then they go on to say, you're not as welcome, appreciated, or needed as much as you think you are. I didn't think any of those. I couldn't give a rat's ass of people that don't know they're a fucking dick from a fucking lamppost. It thinks about me if they can't even have the respect to, one, give me citations when asked for it, and two, literally show me where the logic fails. Why would I care about that? The only reason I give a shit is the one or two people that go, holy shit, maybe this guy had a point. Which, by the way, I had a few people come to me and go, holy shit, you have a point. And now that I'm Facebook friends with them and now that I'm communicating with them, they want to read more stuff. So, it's like I think a lot of people change their minds that way. Let me finish this, I'll get the live chat. And so, kindly conduct yourself as a normal member of this group on equal footing with all the others. But here's the thing, I'm not on equal footing. I know this topic pretty decently. And this is the reason why I'm asked to go on various channels to talk about this topic. I'm going on a channel tomorrow to talk about some things. I have another channel that wants to interview me next week. This is why I've had seminars that I've had to fly to talk about this topic. It doesn't mean that I'm an expert in it. I'm not. I've never claimed any expertise. What it means is I've had experience with this topic. That's the difference. And so when I have experience with something and somebody who has no experience tells me I'm wrong, I'm going to expect a measured, reasonable argument about why I'm wrong. And I never get that. So we're not on equal footing. For example, my background was in nuclear reactor operations. I had to qualify 2 nuclear power plants to become supervisor. S1C and D2G and S1C reactor core systems. It's been 30 years. I had to know a little bit about physics. Doesn't make me an expert, but I sure know the difference between latent heat of vaporization and latent heat of fusion, right? I still know the difference between Pascal's pressure law and Reynolds number. I have a little bit of understanding of the physics. Even though I can't do the math, it's way beyond me, but I still have enough to do calc level 1 and 2 maybe. But if somebody says, hey, Steve, your calculus is wrong, and I'm like, okay, here's my argument. My argument that the derivative of x squared is 2x, and you say, hey, Steve, that's wrong. And I say, okay, can you show me why that is wrong? Because as I learned calculus, and I think everybody on the planet learned calculus, whether you take learn it from graphical calculus or analytical calculus, or you use Leibniz notation, you use Newtonian notation, the derivative of x squared is 2x. If you tell me that it's not true, I'm going to expect you to have an argument. Not that I expect you to convince me otherwise, because I know for a fact that's true, but I want to see where your error lies. Because if you're that fundamentally flawed in calculus, where you don't know that the first derivative of x squared is 2x, how am I supposed to take you seriously if we start getting into second and third derivatives, right? Or if you start doing what's called snap, crackle, pop, or jerk, snap, crackle, pop. By the way, anybody in my live chat know what those are? Somebody's in my live chat got to know. Oh my God, is that Neil, the freaking 604 atheist? Holy shit, dude. Dude, it's been a while. I got. Hang on there. Don't go nowhere, Neil. So let me get my live chat. Let me think here. Okay, I got. How do we solve the McRae problem? They will resolve with nerves of steel. It'll take resolve and nerves of steel. Kimamaki says, yeah. I swear to God, man, I'm a boil on the ass of atheism, I guess. Even though I've converted more people to atheism than most atheists ever have. Well, we know, James. Well, wait a minute. I thought your penis is a lamppost. I've heard things, James. I've heard things. Kimo says, Answers and Reasons has really scaled back their streams. I wish it was different. They're over in the UK. That's probably why. But yeah, I really like those guys over there. People know I'm a huge fan of Answers and Reasons. Or Answers and Reasons. So if you go and you check out Answers and Reasons blog and look up my name, there's a few entries of me. But I think that really started Joe on his path to understanding philosophy better, even though he was really good at it before. He's amazing now. But also, Res Rhetoric, you guys may not know this, but Res Rhetoric was Christian when I met him. Whoa, no way. Yeah, way. Yes, this is a fun fact. Res Rhetoric, when he was doing the Lion Ghost show way back when, or even maybe it was just before. Yeah, no, it was the Lion Ghost show, I think. Yeah, he was a Christian. And then he met me. And I don't even go around deconverting people from Christianity. That's never been one of my things. I'm a friendly agnostic. I don't mind if people are Christian. It doesn't bother me in the least. But he started looking into things and realizing that there's some problems here. And now he's the foremost and most formidable anti-flat Earth debater on the planet. Certainly on YouTube, and I'm going to say probably on the planet. Okay, so Neil, you are being a bad boy. Yes, I am, dude. When are we going to have a chat, man? I'm a fan of your show, believe it or not, Neil. I've always respected you. I've never had an issue with Neil, the 604 atheist. But motherfucker, you have guests on all the time that I like, and you never goddamn once said, "Hey, Steve, man, I got your friend such and such on. Why don't you join me? We'll have a drink. It'll piss off Aaron Raw. It'll piss off Matt Dillahunty, but fuck them all. Why don't you do that, man? Come on, man." Because I would love to have you on the show one day, Neil. I really respect what you do. I mean, like I said, I don't think we've ever had an online conversation. I don't think we ever have. But I like your deconversion stories, and yeah, I want to do something with you, man. No, I'm not hitting on the guy, even though we used to look alike. Neil and I think we looked a lot alike when I had my long hair. Oh, hey, there's Mark Roast right there. Video Games. Gamma. So Mark Roast, I'm glad you're in the audience there. Please let people know in my live chat if anything I've said so far is incorrect. Have I distorted anything? Have I exaggerated anything? Have I made any clerical errors, logical errors, grammatical errors? Well, I make those all the time. Epistemological errors. Am I not spot on that every single time I post something in these atheist groups, especially the one we're talking about, my logic has been correct and it's intelligible? And one of the test measures I have to see if something is intelligible is if somebody can repeat it back to me and understand it and tell me what it's saying and then discuss it. Mark Roast can do that, which means that it made sense to him. Now, I don't know Mark's background. I know it's something, and he knows logic and philosophy, not on an expertise level or anything, but he definitely has a background somewhere. Yeah. Oh, was I on your? Oh, you know what, Neil? I was on your show once with, I think, wasn't it with Kyle? Way back when. Oh my God, that was way, way, way long time ago. Yeah, I think that was with Kyle, wasn't it, Neil? Well, I want to come on again though, and I'm serious. Challenge me, dude. Take my arguments apart, because the atheists in these Facebook groups are cowards. They're echo chambers. They're as bad as flat earthers. They don't care about logic. They don't care about reason. They don't care about atheism. They don't care about philosophy. They don't care about any of that shit. All they care about is parroting what they think they know, what they don't know, and then having everybody else go, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, let's get rid of Steve. Let's kick him." I'm in dozens of Facebook groups. I have my own Facebook group. I have 3 of them, actually. I've got the Great Debate Community, and then I'm admin in 2 other groups that I've owned that are nothing relating to this stuff. One of them has 3.5 thousand. The other one's 5,000. So nothing huge, but I mean, and then I'm admins for like League of Extraordinary Humans, which Christy Santiago. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups that they trust me enough to admin. So I know what the fuck I'm doing in these topics. Argumentative administrators. Oh, we did both separate shows. Okay, it's been so long. Forgive me, Neil. I've already forgotten about you, brother. But have me count again. You know, I've been blowing off people from requests again, not intentionally, but I've had a lot of people ask me to come on their channels lately, and I just haven't been in the mindset to do it. This is the first time in a while that I've just been feeling so much better for a lot of different things, a lot of weight off my shoulders, so to speak. I was going through some shit. Okay. So that's why tonight I said, fuck it, man, let's have a drink. So if people start inviting me on their shows again, I'll be a little more accommodating, and I'll start coming on again. Yeah, it's 4 years ago, right? You know, Bo. See, here's the thing, Neil. Here's what's funny. Neil, have you read? And by the way, I might open this to a live chat, if you, a voice chat, if you guys want. If you guys want to come on and talk, that's fine with me. But let me ask you, Neil. One, have you read my paper? And two, do you know if Matt Dillahunty or Aaron Ra do they know anything about my paper, right? How the presumption of atheism leads to semantic collapse by way of semiotic square of opposition. You know. Oh, okay? So yeah, Minsky, sure. I mean, so you've got some background in epistemology and stuff like that. So I would trust you as somebody that can review my arguments and tell me objectively, critique them to see if there's some errors to them, and I appreciate that. And this is why when Mark says, "Yeah, I understand what Steve's saying. He's right on the money," and he'll post something like, "Yeah, that's what I'm saying," and then we're like, "Okay, well, let's talk about sports or something." You know, it's at that point, him and I are agreeing. It's like, this is pretty basic, actually. I'm not writing any profound stuff in these Facebook groups. For the most part, my paper is a little more complicated, obviously. But as far as I'm writing in these Facebook atheist groups, it's not that profound. But it's to get them to think. It's to get them to go, holy shit, maybe I have some major epistemic problems, even when I think I understand when it comes to simple canonical laws of logic. Because I had somebody quote me today, law of excluded middle, and they didn't understand the law of excluded middle doesn't apply to beliefs for contradictories, right? If you have a belief, you can believe or not believe, but you also believe or don't believe, or believe or false or believe true. And so those are contradictories, and that's not mutually exclusive. I mean, not jointly exhaustive. They're mutually exclusive, but they're not jointly exhaustive. So because atheism and theism are contradictories, if atheism is true, theism is false. If theism is true, atheism is false. But beliefs are different. I can believe God exists. I can believe God does not exist. I can believe neither. Oh, there we go. Or I can believe both, and it'll be obviously a contradiction. But it's still possible. It is possible. You can have logical contradictions mentally, because that's what cognitive dissonance is. But that's not a dichotomy. Believing true versus believing false is not dichotomous. It's mutually exclusive. You can't do both and be rational, but they are not jointly exhaustive. All right, so let me finish this real quick. And then he says, this person says, Aaron Wolf, Steve McCrae, in fact, the real test of how well you understand a subject is whether you can teach it to someone else, not just show it up a garbled mess to someone else. Okay, here's the thing, though. I'm on so many different social media sites, all right? I mean, I've got my Facebook, I've got my YouTube, I've got Rumble now, I've got Twitter, I've got Instagram, I got emails I deal with. You think I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to explain something on a Facebook group unless somebody asks me to, when you don't even want to even recognize that I might be right? Why would I bother to do that? I can do these things. I've gone to seminars and explained to people, you know, a group of people, big old room of people asking me questions, and I was able to explain to them. There's videos of that on my channel, and there's in other places. I was on Reasons to Believe for a year on Agree to Argue, where we would explain things to people. I would argue with Dr. Fuzz Rana and Dr. Hugh Ross, and we'd have all these discussions, and we were able to explain the topics. So explaining stuff, I mean, again, I used to train people to operate a nuclear power plant, so I had to be able to explain basic thermodynamics to people. I had to be able to explain what happens when you raise rod height in a reactor core, how it changes the temperature of the moderator, how the atoms change, how the fission rates change, how the thermal utilization factor changes, how the fast resonant escape probability changes, how the fast fission factor, how all these things for the K effective, if it's greater than 1, equal to 1, less than 1. These are all things you would have to know to understand how a reactor works. I had to explain those things to people. I can explain atheism to people. I can explain basic logic. I don't have to be an expert for that. None of us do. That's the whole point of my channel. People have not figured out that the point of my channel, at least this particular channel, is that any persons with the wanting to learn basic stuff can do it and explain it. It's for those types of people like myself. Even though I've had 4 years of college, I didn't finish, but I have 4 years of college. You don't need that. You just need the want and the desire and the ability to try to learn something, and then be able to explain it. And if I can understand something, then I think anybody can. All right. And then I'm going to get on to my argument here in a second. All right, so let me close that. You don't think they have? Oh, I don't. Okay, so I'll send. I think I have you on Twitter still. I'm pretty sure. I'll send it to you on DM on Twitter, Neil, if you don't mind. I want you to check it out. James, you read my paper, right, James? You know my positions on deities, mythological figures. I don't remember. I mean, I a lot of people have gone into deism lately, and again, I don't disrespect anybody's personal beliefs if it's held rationally and it's held with honesty, right? If you have an honest belief, I'm going to treat you a lot different than somebody that I believe is lying. Flat earthers do not have honest beliefs, at least for the most part. I think a lot of them are posed. I think a lot of them just want to have attention. So I'm not going to treat them with the same respect that I am for somebody who believes in things like deism or pantheism or pandeism or panpsychism. And especially because like panpsychism, I think panpsychism has some pretty interesting arguments. Do I believe it? No. But I can understand why somebody would argue for it. It does resolve a lot of problems in the philosophy of mind arena. It does actually solve some things, if you believe it or not. Nameless says, who's this guy? Which guy? Neil? Chemo? April? I mean, who's that? All right, so let me dive in the argument that I had. And there's some meta stuff going on here, because the whole thing with the meta is that this argument was designed to show that if you run it, it's going to trigger atheist. That's absurd. Or new atheists. I'm not all atheists. I mean, the atheists in my audience, you guys aren't stupid. I don't put you guys in that category of these new atheist trademark that are just parroting what they've learned from Matt Dillahunty, even though Matt Dillahunty knows goddamn well my positions and decides to lie about them anyways. All right, so this is my blog, and it says, and look at the date on here, February 15th, 2021. Watch out for that Neil guy. It's the hair, man. Do you guys? And by the way, let me know if you guys want me to open this up for chat, the voice chat. If you guys want to come on and talk, I'm happy with that. But let me know. Did you used to debate Darth Dawkins? Yes, way back in the day. And in fact, it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because some people would be like, "Oh, Steve McRae is the Darth Dawkins of epistemology," and yet I was the one with Alex Malpass, who's done a brilliant job because that dude's smart as shit. Ozymandias Ramses II, Floyd F.P., Greg, Dr. Gary. Goddamn, what's Gary's last name? Oh my God, Dr. Gary. I forgot his last name. Edwards, Dr. Gary Edwards, and also Dr. Michael from NGC Studios. But mostly, we were the ones that were trying to explain to people why presuppositional apologetics is bullshit. How to avoid the pitfalls from people like Darth Dawkins, who try to trap people in these really bizarre fucking presuppositional apologetics that are a almost expertise level of sophistry, because they are sophistry, no question about it. And some of them are very difficult to try to navigate those waters, because the presuppositional apologist like Darth Dawkins, who's just like a Psi 10 clone, who, by the way, happens to be a friend of mine. Psi 10 and I get along very well, actually, even though we don't agree on anything. But I happen to get along with the guy. We had to explain how to navigate the waters with Darth Dawkins. And I wasn't the only one. There's also, the POW talkers. Big props to them. They were the big ones, actually. They did more than I did on it. But they just seemed to fall by the wayside, and I don't know whatever happened to them. But, all right, Neil. I'll send you that later, Neil, and we'll be in touch. We'll do something. And so anyways, though, I didn't really debate Darth. I just basically would go on his panel and go, "Hey, Darth, this, and this, and this. And of course, he would just throw his sophistic arguments around, and people would go, yeah, Darth, you're just full of crap. All right, but let's dive into this. So this argument here, how to trigger this part 2, atheism can't be true in consistent logical systems. I had 3 of these, remember? So this is all the way back in 2021 that I wrote this. Let me know if you guys can see it. Hope you guys can. And I wrote and I said, another interesting thing that I found that triggers lack of belief atheist is when you point out that they have an inconsistent logical system. This means that given any systems of premises, that they cannot all be true at the same time. Now, where I was going with this was that the atheists out there that are arguing for atheism, because in these groups, this was only going to be part 1 of this argument. There's going to be more, but I never got to it. But you can't have groups like atheist versus theist if it's not propositional. Because what the hell then are you arguing? If you have a group atheist versus theist or atheist versus religion, because I'm in both those groups, what is it you're fucking arguing if it's not propositional? You cannot say theists are wrong if it's not propositional. You cannot say theism is false unless it's propositional. Right? Because it makes no sense to talk about true and false if it's psychological. That's just a state of belief or non-belief. But propositional beliefs can hold a truth value. Psychological beliefs cannot. And as Draper points out, you can't even get a propositional belief from a psychological belief. You can't even have what they would call strong atheism from weak atheism. Because, as he points out, it leaves strong atheism out in the cold, because all of a sudden you're taking a psychological position and you're trying to draw inference from it to get to a propositional. You can't do that. You can go the other way around. But that's the problem. They're having a converse problem. You can have a proposition that then leads to a psychological, which would be believes the proposition means it implies that you don't believe the proposition is false. But the other way doesn't work. And so I say, example, 1, a square has only 4 sides. 2, a square has 3 sides, only 3 sides. Now, we all know that the first one is true. Now remember, these are descriptive, by the way, right? You don't prescribe definitions like this. This would never work as a prescriptive definition because there are other shapes that have 4 sides. Any kind of parallelogram where the sides aren't equal with 4 internal right angles. A rhombus, for example. Okay, that's not a square, it has 4 sides though. And we all know that 2 is false. One of those propositions has to be false, as there's a contradiction of both 1 and 2 are true. So far, so good, right? You think that when they were reading this, they go, okay, yeah, that's pretty basic, Steve. Damn, okay, that's simple. Where are you going with this? Okay, let's find out. Can you guys read this on the outside? Is it too blurry? Hopefully it's not too blurry for you. It shouldn't be. I'm streaming in 1080i, for this reason, so it's not too blurry, but let me know. Yeah, Kibamaki. Panpsychism has been argued by Thomas Nagel, and I haven't read Strawson. I have read Nagel, but they've argued that it really kind of has some interesting points for philosophy of mind, and I like Nagel. I mean, have you read what is it? To Be a Bat? Have you read that, Kimomaki? Nagel's treatise on what it's like to be a bat. Okay, so I go on to say, lack of belief atheists often will say atheism is not a proposition, but merely responds to a theist proposition in that they merely do not believe that the proposition of theism is true. Okay, we all know how stupid that is. What is it you're actually saying when you say that? I don't believe your claim. Okay, great. Why? Well, I don't want to tell you why. I don't have any onus to tell you why. No, you don't, because that's a discursory burden. But you do have a burden to justify to yourself why you didn't accept the proposition, for any proposition. If I tell you the proposition is x equals x is true, well, everybody in their right mind who's rational should say, yeah, that's a true proposition. I believe that proposition. But if you say, hey, I don't believe that proposition, even though you're not affirming negation, even though you're not saying I believe it's false, you're just saying I'm not convinced. You haven't given me enough reason. I'm going to look at you like you're an idiot. If you tell me you do not believe that x equals x is true, I'm going to look at you like you're an idiot. And no, you don't have to justify it to me unless you're trying to convince me that for some reason that I'm wrong, but you certainly have an epistemic duty to yourself to justify why you don't believe something which is a fundamental law of the universe. It's a canonical law. The law of identity is the most fundamental axiomatic law of logic that I can think of. If there's something more fundamental, I don't know what it is. I really don't. It's beyond my level. Beyond my level of understanding for a axiom to be more fundamental than x equals x. But if you withhold affirmation for that and you suspend judgment on that, I'd like to know why. But I never get an answer on any of this stuff, right? So if a theist says God exists and you withhold affirmation, you really need to explain why. You can't just say I don't believe you and think that's justified, because maybe the theist might have a logically valid sound proof. Of course, I believe that's not the case. But let's say that the theist did have actual evidence that God exists. Let's say they had God in their hand. Okay, let's say James, who I know believes in God, said, "Here's Steve. This is God," and lo and behold, he has God in his hand. At that point, I would have to, one, question my sanity, but I'd like to go, oh, look, James has demonstrated that he has God in his hand, and I have to believe that. I've had belief revisionism. But even if a more simplistic thing, let's say, let me pick an item here, a Diet Coke can, right? I say I have a Diet Coke can in my hand. I'm showing you this Diet Coke can, and you say, hey, Steve, I don't believe you. Okay, well, what the hell you think it is then? What is it that's missing that you don't think this is a Diet Coke can? Because I'm going to think you're an idiot if you don't believe this. Now, you can say, oh, it's a 3D hologram. Okay, if you want to throw in all these possibilities, then you just bloated your ontology to the point of absurdity, that you have an unwielable ontological framework where you think it could be anything. It could be, well, aliens are just shooting that image into my brain. That is a Diet Coke can. Okay, is that what you believe? Is that something you're just throwing out as a bare possibility, or is that something you actually believe? Because there's actually belief, then yeah, I'm not going to really have a conversation with you. Okay, so far, does everybody in my live chat understand this? I mean, we got 20 people watching. Okay, so 23. So how many of you actually understand this so far? It should be all of you. Okay. Now, I'll say they would be correct that merely refusing P, not accepting, which is not the same as rejection. Rejection of P means to assert negation. That's under the Frege-Geach rejectionism. So if you say I reject P, it means to believe it's false, or assert it's false, not that merely not accept. So all rejecting is not accepting, but not all not accepting is rejection. The converse doesn't hold. So they would be correct that the merely refusing P of theism is true would indeed mean atheism is not propositional, but a psychological state of unbelief. Okay, so far so good. If April gets it, then anybody can get this. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. All right, as long as April gets it, we're good. All right. And I say, this is all seemingly logically consistent so far, but then what would it mean if atheism is not propositional? That atheism cannot be true or false, since only a proposition would be true or false, right? If I just say, dog, okay, what does that mean, dog? It's nothing that's true or false, right? I'm not making any statement about any kind of ontological status. I'm not saying dog exists. I'm not saying the dog is thirsty. I'm just saying dog. That's not truth apt, right? There's no propositional value they have there. So if I just say I don't believe something, sure, it's true or false that I don't believe. I could actually be lying and say I don't believe when I do, but that's not what the proposition values we're talking about. It's not a propositional belief. It's a psychological belief of unbelief. And so I think it's pretty well understood that a psychological belief is merely a mental state. God dang it, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I was rude. I'm having a Jack and Coke. It's been a while since I had a drink. With brandy in it. Ooh. Psychological belief is merely a mental status, not a proposition that can hold a truth value. So, I tend to capitalize Boolean states. So usually in my writings, and this is just me. There's no formality here for anybody else. But if I say true, I capitalize the T. If I say false, I capitalize the F. And sometimes I capitalize the whole word. But I do that because I just find it's easier to read. For when I'm reading something and I see, the state is, true, TRUE, I will see that easier if I just see the T there as capitalized. So Nameless says, things don't need to be propositions in order to be truth apt. Well, give me an example of something that is true. Okay, he retracted it. He retracted it. I was like, give me an example of a statement that's not a proposition that's truth apt. If you can have a defeater, then I'll check it out. You know? Okay, thank you, Instealer. You can read this. Thank you. Okay, so I said this leads to two propositions. And there's a lot of different ways I could have worded this. But I worded it this way. 1, atheism is not propositional. Let's assume that that's their position for the lack of belief atheist, right? We all know that atheism is propositional. We all know that atheism is a claim that God does not exist because we're not all idiots. But let's assume that this is a lack of belief atheist. They're saying this. Atheism is not propositional, psychological. Okay. And 2, atheism cannot be true or false. Now, any lack of belief atheist should have jumped on this and said, yeah, that's fucking right. That's true. Yeah, atheism is not propositional, then therefore it cannot be true or false. And some did. There was a few, which leads to another part of the discussion. But, of course, some didn't understand what the hell I was saying, and they didn't understand what I meant when I said that if atheism cannot be true or false, then it cannot be false by conjunctive elimination, right? Because if it's true or false and it cannot be true, it cannot be, then it cannot be, well, did I put that right? Then it cannot be false by atheism cannot be true. Or okay. So what I meant by this is if atheism can either be true or false, then it can either be true and either be false by conjunctive elimination. In other words, of the disjuncts, true or false, if it cannot be either, then both of them are false. Right? It can't be either of the disjuncts. Does that make sense? A or B. If it's not A, then it's B. Not B, then it's A, but it's neither A or B, then both A and B must be false. Right? For a truth table. And so in this particular schema right here of these two statements, both of them cannot be true at the same time. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. This one actually, this one actually is logically consistent. If atheism is not propositional, atheism cannot be true or false. So this one is logically consistent. Why? Because both of them could be true. To the lack belief atheist. Right? Now, to me, obviously, atheism can be true or false because I take it propositionally. But they have to recognize that atheism cannot be true or false. So they can't go around and say atheism is true. They can't even argue for atheism because what are you arguing? You can't even say theism is false. Because if you say theism is false, you're admitting that these are propositional things that we're talking about. If you're admitting that theism is propositional, you're epistetically committing yourself by rationality that atheism is propositional. You can't have one without the other. They're coextensive, P or not P. BP or not BP, BP or B not P for the contradictories. So you see where I'm going with this so far? That I'm trying to explain to them the problem with their understanding of not just atheism, but why it makes no sense to have lack of belief as your usages. So I'd say P or Q, therefore P, right? You can write that, right? P or Q, not one of the disjuncts, it's the other disjunct. If P or Q, not P, they're Q. If not Q, then P. Matter of fact, you guys remember way back when I got on the panel with Matt Slick, and it was Michael Rappaport who introduced me. He's like, oh, yeah, on the panel right now, we have, he said, like, we have well-known agnostic, Steve McRae. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm that well-known, but okay. And then I had a conversation with Matt trying to explain to him Alex Malpass's argument of why his argument for God, not God, was flawed, right? It wasn't my argument. I was repeating what Dr. Malpass was trying to explain to him, because Dr. Malpass sat there forever to try to explain to Matt Slick why his argument was flawed. And Matt Slick was like, well, how do I save this? And Malpass was like, dude, you can't. Your argument is dead in the water, right? And of course, Alex was completely correct. I don't think Alex has been wrong in his life when it comes to logic. If Alex tells me that X does not equal X, I'm going to go, maybe. I might disagree. I just might agree with them, because it's Malpass, right? In fact, what study was it? Is it the Benford study? Somebody's smarter than I am, because I'm trying to recall here. What was the name of the study where they had a group of people, and they had one person in the group that was the actual participant of the study that didn't know what the study was about, and they had the other actors, and they would show like a line, and they would show 3 other lines, A, B, or C, and they would ask which one's equal to the first line, the reference. And the first time they'd be like, okay, it's A, and so they go, okay, person 1 A, person 2 B, A, person 3 C, A. And let's say person C was the person who was really doing this, supposed to be the study participant that wasn't an actor. But then the next time they would have the actors say the line that was completely wrong, that was larger or smaller than the other one. They all agree, like, it's like the larger line. They say, oh, it's A, and the other guy would be like, no, it's C. And then the third time they did it again, and finally the guy in the study would just go along with the group. And so they would go C, 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 even though it would be like D. Right? Because people want to be accepted into the group, and they're going to believe what the group believes, groupthink. And I'm killing myself because I can't think of the name of the damn study. I want to say Binford study, but I don't think that's right. Can somebody look it up for me, one of my mods? Because I'm lazy as shit right now. You know, when I do these things, I don't give a shit to Google. I just want to talk about the stuff and drink. But if somebody can find that for me, I would be greatly appreciative. Anyways, the point being is that if Alec Malpass told me something that I knew to be false, I still would give it consideration. Okay. So I said, or written as A and B, therefore A, right? Example, if it's raining outside and wet, therefore it's raining outside. Right? You're just taking one of the conjunctions. If the car is fast and blue, then the car's fast. If the car's fast and blue, then the car's blue. You're just taking one of the sides of the conjunction. Asher's conformity studies. Figures you would know. PhD in philosophy. What do you psychology? Yeah. Figures it's like the expert in psychology would know what this is. So you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, thank you. Asher's conformity studies. So I'm not making this shit up, right, James? This was a real study that's been formed many, many, many times, and it seems to always have the same conclusions. People will conform under peer pressure just because they want to fit in. You know. Thank you, James. Asher's, yeah, okay. I do know. I know what the studies are, but it's so scary that I just don't remember some of the names, right? I do like the Milgram experiment, though. The Milgram experiment, I think. Oh man, that yeah. Okay. So I say, given atheism cannot be true or false is logically the same as atheism cannot be true and atheism cannot be false. And these are probably what's called De Morgan's laws. And I used De Morgan's laws in my paper. De Morgan's laws is a fancy way to relate the negation of a quantified conjunction that is logically equivalent to the disjunction with the disjuncts being negated. That's, okay, so there's different De Morgan laws. But basically, it's a way to convert one thing for the conjunction into a disjunct. That's basically what it is, or vice versa. Okay? Now remember, this is basic logic. This is not that complicated, and yet people in that group is like, Steve doesn't know logic. And yet they didn't know what law of negation was. They didn't know what law of exclude middle is. They didn't understand it properly. Or law of non-contradiction. Law of non-contradiction. Okay. And so I say, example, a square cannot have 2 or 3 sides. Equals a square cannot have 2 sides, and a square cannot have 3 sides. Right? It can't have either. Given atheism cannot be true, and atheism cannot be false, therefore atheism cannot be true by conjunctive elimination. That just makes sense, right? So I'm literally giving them breadcrumbs to get down this path, right? People say your arguments are unwieldy and very wordy. They're not. There's a reason why I write my arguments the way they are, because I write them for the people that want to learn these things and can go step by step to see what I'm doing in the argument. That's it. And so, according to the lack of belief atheist, which I was trying to explain to these people in this group that booted me out like any other group that doesn't want to learn basic logic, if you hold atheism psychologically as just merely not believing, then atheism cannot be true. I've just shown you this. Now, that is not inconsistent. there's nothing wrong with that as far as reasoning. The problem is, do you want to be, as an atheist, be able to go around and tell people atheism cannot be true? Think about that. If you're an atheist, do you really want to hold a position that makes it obligatory for you to say atheism cannot be true? Because I think it makes your position silly. I can tell you right now, every Christian I know wants Christianity to be true, or believes Christianity to be true. They don't say Christianity is merely a lack of belief in Islam. They don't say Christianity is merely a lack of belief of atheism. So Christianity can be true or false. I believe it's false. I'm not agnostic on that, but whatever. But you don't see any Christians out there going, Christianity cannot be true. You might find atheists out there that say that, which I think is a pretty hefty claim. But here, I've just logically proven that the lack of belief atheist has to affirm that atheism cannot be true. Logically so. But ask yourself out there, if you hold to this bizarre, atypical usage of atheism, do you want to be able to? I mean, do you want to be able to say atheism is true? Of course you would. Do you want to be in an honest conversation and somebody says, "Hey, is it the case that atheism cannot be true?" Well, you're obligated to say, "Yeah, atheism cannot be true." So if a theist says, "Hey, can theism be true?" and the atheist says, "Well, theism is propositional. Yeah, it can be true." I mean, they could argue it's impossible. Don't get me wrong, but let's have a little principle of charity here, right? They'll argue, yeah, theism, yeah, it can be true or false. I believe it's false, or I have no position either way. But yeah, theism can be true. What about atheism? Oh no, atheism can't be true. Why? Oh, because I hold a lack of belief atheism. Does everybody see the point of this so far? Please, one person tell me that they can see the problem with this, because this group didn't understand this worth a shit. And this is good stuff here. I'm sorry. My arguments, I think, are pretty freaking well thought out. And they're also like, well, Steve, you're just self-aggrandizing yourself. Well, you know what? When I trigger 50 fucking atheists on an argument that says it's going to trigger them because they didn't understand it, and they didn't understand it, they got triggered, yeah, I'm going to aggrandize myself. Because the argument was it's going to trigger people. So I say both of these propositions clearly then both can be true. But if atheism is not propositional, then it too can't be true. I maybe should have worded that differently. And it can't be false either, right? So if an atheist says atheism is not a proposition, but merely a response to one, which you hear all the time, atheism is a response to the claim. Shut the fuck up. Go to college, study the material, get a basic understanding, because all you're doing is parroting what you heard somebody else say that you didn't understand. You don't go verify it to be correct yourself, and I find that to be intellectually dishonest. But if they say, but merely response to one, then you can tell them that it is the case that atheism cannot be true. If they do not then see they have to reject at least one or two, then they are in the state of an irrationality with an inconsistent belief system. Since for two to be true, one has to be true. Okay? Because think about that. If atheism is not propositional, atheism cannot be true. Therefore, both those statements are true. So for both those statements to be true, one has to be true and true has to be true. They have to accept both of them. If they accept one, they must accept two. And if they accept one and reject two, they have an inconsistent logical system, as they end up with atheism is not propositional and atheism can be true. Well, that right there is an inconsistent logical proposition. Hey, Triumph. Wow, that's been a while since you've been around. I remember that name, Triumph the Insult Dog. That's not the character, but I remember the screen names. So I say, where clearly both of the premises cannot be true. If one is true, then two is false, and atheism cannot be true. Then, as soon as you tell the lack of belief atheist that they are using their system of premises, atheism cannot be true. Oh, excuse me. Let me read this again. then as soon as you tell the lack-of belief atheist that they're using the system of premises, atheism can't be true, the triggering usually and inevitably ensues. And as is often the case, having irrational, incoherent systems of belief. And I find that to be the case with very fruit-on-the-ground creationists. I found that to be the case with flat earthers, that as soon as they get some cognitive dissonance, as soon as they get some pushback, as soon as they get something in their head that says, oh shit, maybe I have a problem in my philosophy and my logic here, they get triggered. And they almost inevitably block you. That's their safety mechanism. That's their way of shutting out reason and logic and critical thinking by blocking people. And they have every right to do it. That's not my argument. But don't ever try to convince somebody that you're a critical thinker when you block people that clearly understand some of the basics, trying to explain to you something that nobody in their right mind that has an education on these topics would disagree with, I don't think. And then say you're open-minded. Oh, give me evidence, I'll change my mind. No, you won't. I could tell you, I've had math that I will argue with people, showing them that the math proof is correct. Math, 0.99 repeating equals 1, right? And you still have people go, that's wrong. Oh, well, here's an objective source. Here's peer-reviewed sources. Oh, here's a formal proof. Here's a proof checker. It's all correct. Oh, no, it's wrong. Don't tell me you have an objective mindset, that you're willing to change your position given sufficient reason, when I tell you something and prove it, and you still don't accept it. If I tell you x equals x and you don't accept it, what the fuck am I supposed to do with you? You are at the point of irrationality where any conversation would be non-productive. If I give you a mathematical proof and it's been verified, checked, peer-reviewed, blah, 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 and you still don't accept it, and you don't think to yourself that maybe you have the epistemic issue, that you may not be as versed in mathematics as you should be, and I'm not that great at mathematics, I'm not by any stretch of imagination. I struggled in calculus level stuff, but I still was able to do it. But I do know repeating decimals at least. If you're not willing to revise your beliefs, then why would anybody want to have a conversation with you? I'm at least willing, when I go into these groups, to revise my belief system, my belief box. All I ask is, again, show me where my proof fails. Show me where the evidence is. Show me your citation. And then they go, well, that's argument, appeal to authority fallacy. No, it's not. If you have a citation that supports and buttresses your argument, that anybody who's ever wrote a paper in college would have to do, that is not appeal to argument fallacy. Actually, appeal to authority fallacy. Is it appeal to authority? Yeah, but it's called a legitimate appeal to authority, or argumentative ad verecundiam. I hate that word. But that's perfectly fine. That's not a fallacy. Okay? Just like in logic, there's there's premise circularity and there's rule circularity. Premise circularity is always fallacious, but rule circularity is not necessarily fallacious. It can be or it cannot be. It depends. But same thing with citations. If you cite a recognized expert on the topic that they're pontificating upon, that is perfectly not only reasonable in a debate and a discussion or in a paper, it's expected. It's normative. You ought to do it. You're supposed to do it. And yet I have these lack of belief atheists condemning me when I cite the experts on their sourcing of their papers and their entries on Stanford Encyclopedia, in Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is peer-reviewed. This is telling to me that the atheist community online, you're all a bunch of fucking idiots. I'm just going to be blunt. You're just a bunch of fucking idiots. Every single one of you that are out there that have been indoctrinated into this lack of belief bullshit, even though so many now atheists have come to realize that's bullshit. Even Alex O'Connor, cosmic skeptic, realizes bullshit. Why? Because he went to Oxford. And I had conversations with him back in the day on that, and we would get into it in private. I have a lot of private conversations with him. Rationality rules. Disagreed with me big time. And I explained to him the gumballs and God thing. He still couldn't get it. Then he went to college or whatever, and he's like, oh shit, Steve was right. He even messaged me. He's like, hey, Steve, I got a video come up I think you're going to like. And he's like, I meant you in it. And he mentioned me in it because I think it was a little nod to me like, oh shit, Steve was right this entire time. And so more and more atheists are taking the position atheism is the belief that God does not exist. Why? Because that's what you're arguing. That's what you want to argue to a theist. Why would you get into a debate with a theist if you're not willing to give your reasons why they're wrong? If I just sat there and said, I don't believe you, who gives a shit? Hey, Steve, I don't believe you. Okay, have a nice day. Go fuck off. Hey, Steve, I don't believe you and you're wrong. Okay, show me. I don't want to show you. Okay, then we're not having a discussion. You don't have no onus to show me. I agree with you. But why would I waste my time with you? But when you're in these Facebook groups where the names of the titles are atheist versus theist, what the fuck are you arguing? If you're not arguing for atheism, what are you arguing? Are you arguing for lack of belief? No. You're arguing that theists are wrong. And if you're arguing theists are wrong, you're by extension, because they're coextensional, that you're arguing is atheism is true. So I beg atheists out there to explain to me, why would they not want atheism to be propositional? Why would you not want to be able to go to a theist and go, man, let me tell you, God doesn't exist. Let me explain to you why. Why would you not want to be able to go up to them and say atheism is true? Why would you want to go into a debate having committed yourself to the position that atheism cannot be true? Because if the theist asks you, can atheism be true? You have to say no. Now, you could say, well, it can't be false either. Sure, I get that. Right? Because that's one of the disjuncts. It's either, atheism cannot be true or false. That's true. So it can't be true and it can't be false. But why would you want to hobble yourself like that? I don't understand it. I really, honest to God, that may or may not exist, cannot understand these fucking idiots in these Facebook groups that tell me they understand atheism, that tell me they understand atheology, that tell me they understand philosophy, that tell me they understand logic, and yet make stupid fucking mistakes like, oh, atheism is true, but it's not propositional. Or, oh, Steve, you're doing a fallacy of appeal to authority when I have a citation. Or here's a dictionary. Anyways, that is my rant on that particular thing. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I even ended it with that. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And every single fucking atheist in that group didn't understand any of this. So if you do out there, you're much smarter than the atheist in this particular group. And it's no big deal to get kicked out of a Facebook group. I've been hundreds or dozens or whatever. I mean, I was one of the original people to get kicked out of Atheist Republic back in the day for, similar stuff. And now that's turned into a meme, haven for the traditional atheist troll that just goes, oh, you sky daddy. Oh, goat herders. These people have no ability to have a conversation. They have no ability to understand any of the topics. They don't want to understand the topics. They've recused themselves from any kind of honest dialogue. Anybody can go say, I don't believe you. Anybody can say sky daddy. Anybody could say, goat herders. That's not going to convince a theist that they're wrong. Now, personally, I don't go into discussion trying to convince a theist whether they're right or wrong. I don't try to go into conversation to convince an atheist are right or wrong. What I do is try to explain to them what the fuck they're trying to argue. Hey, speak of that, Uriah Christensen, how you doing, buddy? He's like, I've been on the atheism equals no God for years. Yeah, well, yeah, but here's the thing, Uriah. You understand logic. You have a very, very strong understanding of logic, better than I do. So this is why it's infuriating when these atheists, because they're non-believers, right? I'm a non-believer. I think most of my audience is non-believers, with some exceptions. But it makes us non-believers look like we're fucking morons. And then when they say, hey, Steve, none of this proves you're God. And I'm like, bitch, I tend to Satanism. If anything, if I had to pick a religion right now, it probably would be Satanism. Although I'm not a Satanist, but I respect Satanism. I get it. I like the tenets of it. I like the pushback it gives when it comes to secular society, how it stands up and says, look, if you're a Christian and you're able to have prayer in school, well, we're going to have satanic prayers in school. You're going to have prayer at the state capitol, we're going to have a satanic band at the state capitol. Aaron Ra became a Satanist. I don't begrudge him for it. I respect him for it. But here's Aaron Ra, who's a Satanist, who holds to naturalism. Satanists hold to naturalism for the most part. I mean, it's not necessary, but I mean, it's certainly a big part of Satanism that there is no God, there is no Satan, that there's no supernatural. So Aaron Ra is now a Satanist who holds to naturalism, and anybody who understands naturalism, as far as ontological or philosophical naturalism, you're epistemically committing yourself to God does not exist. Arn believes there's no God. Straight up. He's not a lack of belief atheist. Well, he promotes lack of belief atheism, but he himself is an atheist who believes there's no God. Same with Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty is not somebody who just lacks a belief in God. He believes there's no God. You go to the old versions and early episodes of Atheist Experience, he will say he's a positive atheist. He holds a position that there's no God. So why the fuck would you not argue for that if that's your position? Why would you dumb it down and take a weaker position to the theist? Why would you not try to build the biggest case you can have if you're going to go in a debate with a theist? And if you do hold the belief there's no God, why would you water that down and say, look, I just don't have a belief? How dishonest is that? Matt Dillahunty and Arn Ra have got to be the two most single dishonest philosophy people I've ever seen on YouTube. They're great at everything else. And I swear to God, I know people don't believe me on this, but I miss Arn. I really fucking do. We were friends, but he couldn't handle the fact that he was wrong so many fucking times on basic logic and reason. He would tell me that not B, not P, which is what he grammatically as does not believe the proposition is false, is a double negation. I literally named a fallacy after them. I named a fallacy after them because so many people think that's a double negation because he's telling people double negation. That's not. Uriah Christensen knows that's not a double negation. And I'm going to say he's an expert in logic, but he's certainly a student of logic. Oh, and he's a member of the Satanic Temple. So Uriah is a Satanist, and we get along fantastic. I respect that. Ava Santanis. I would rather have somebody say I'm an atheist, a Satanist than an atheist. People are like, oh, Steve, you don't want to take the label of atheism. Why? Why the fuck would I care what you think about my label? You think I give a shit that if somebody calls me an atheist? It's just not my position. But I'm more offended by being called an atheist than I ever would be by being called a Satanist. Because I'll be like, yeah, hail Satan, rock on, whatever. In fact, I got an upside-down cross here that I wear from Ghost, one of my favorite bands, satanic bands. So anyways, I'm going to close that out. Let me ask you guys this real quick. And then do you guys want to come in and talk, Uriah, or anybody else? I can open up a voice chat if you want, but I don't want to waste my time if nobody wants to join. But I'll do it for a while. If somebody wants to come in, we'll have a little conversation. My main thing is to find those one or two people that go, holy shit, this is making some sense to me. Maybe this guy, Steve, isn't as fucking stupid, incompetent, moronic, or whatever as we've been led to believe because of the smear campaigns against him from people. Oh, shit. I got to change my camera here. Let me change my camera. I can't enter the Streamlabs with that camera. I'll put a Streamlabs link in real quick, and then I'll get to live chat. I forgot about you. There we go. Oh, there I am. Yay. All right. So there's the link to join if you want to come in and talk. I may or may not put it on screen. I don't know. Uriah doesn't because his wife's sleeping. Okay, but somebody else might. Oh, yeah. Ghost is amazing. I love Ghost, man. Hell yeah. Hey, and Steeler, have you ever listened to the live version of Ritual? Oh, my God. It's better than the original. You know, smell human sacrifice. You know. I love, Cersei's. I love Square Hammer. I love Year Zero. Beelzebub, Asmodeus. And that's all tuned down to a D. If you notice the tuning on that, it's not a standard tuning. It's all dropped down to a D. And it's got that heavy, riff sound, Oh, man, I love Ghost. I'm having fun tonight, man. I haven't had a drink in ages. People bought me this alcohol, okay? So whatever. Super chats. When I say that I spend it on food and alcohol, I spend it on food and alcohol. Jack Daniels. Whatever. This actually is my roommate's, but I bought the brandy. But don't tell her I'm drinking her Jack Daniels. Let's see here real quick. Let me go over here. All right, so let me check this out here. Triumph to Insult Dog says, in my opinion, you can lean heavily towards a certain side in something that can't be proved either way, but declaring something is the truth no matter what, no questions in that context is foolish. Well, that's true too. You don't want to say, look, it can't be true or false. You don't want to make the statement, this is categorically the fact, if you're not sufficiently warranted to do that. You can say, look, I lean this way. I think it is more likely the case. That's fine, but I'm not convinced yet. Give me more reasons to be convinced. But you have a lot of atheists going, well, I'm not convinced there's a God. Okay. And then they go, well, I'm not convinced there's not a God. Okay, that's agnostic. No, agnostic deals with knowledge. No, you're wrong. Fuck off. Don't just go read a goddamn book. I'm serious. The next motherfucker that just says atheism and theism is a belief and agnostic is knowledge, I'm just probably going to block at this point. I can't take it. It's so fucking stupid. They're not even related. Agnosticism was coined by Huxley, and it didn't use gnosis. It used nos, and it represented the illusion of having knowledge. It wasn't knowledge itself. It was to inform people of his time that both theist and atheist were unjustified in their belief in any claims to knowledge. Because if you don't have a justification for belief, how the fuck can you have a justification for knowledge when knowledge is a subset of belief? So he was arguing that both theists and atheists were wrong because neither of them have justification from scientific grounding. It was a weak form of evidentialism. But he used the root G-N-O-S, not gnosis, which we related to divine knowledge, not epistemic knowledge, but esoteric knowledge of Sophia, the lesser aeon, that fell from Plamora, to let people know that this trickster god called Yaldabaoth in the Gnostic literature was not the true God. There was an unknown God that was the creator of all the heavens. And so she gave humanity that knowledge, and that knowledge was gnosis. And that's how you became back one with the divine. It wasn't just to know something. It was a very specific, instilled knowledge of the syzygy of Jesus, it was called. So when people throw these terms around like Gnosticism and agnosticism and think they're related, they're not. So, but I do think you're right that if you lean a certain way, you can say, look, I lean, but I'm not convinced. Yeah. April says Sky Daddy is quite fitting, but doesn't prove anything. No, I don't think so. I don't think it's fitting at all. I think it's a little bit of a straw man. Especially if you look at it from a theological perspective, when you look at a personalized God or a great demerge, which we call theistic personalism, it's not in the sky. It's not in the sky. So it's or even pantheism wouldn't be. It'd be everything. So Triumph says, I am mostly an atheist, but Satanism seems like an edgy, goth, hot topic way to stick to religion. And to some degree it is. But again, I promote secularism, right? I promote separation of church and state. I don't want prayer in school. I don't want any government-sanctioned religion. I don't want people being indoctrinated into a specific religion. And so I respect the Satanic Temple. And I've had Lucien Greaves on the show before. I've talked to Lucien Greaves a few times. And he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. But I respect that. So if I had to choose a religion, it's going to be that because that's something that I'm very passionate about. And yes, it would be more performative. I get this, right? When you're a Satanist, it's not like you're having religious beliefs per se. It is an activist position, much the similar way a secular humanist position would be. And I don't subscribe to secular humanism, although I use their symbol occasionally, and I like some things about secular humanism. There's just some things about it that I don't fully, attribute myself to. But I respect it. So the atheist Hammer says, I don't agree with you all the time, but this is how I do I do. How many times do you tell kids Santa's not real? Most Christians don't understand the origins of their religion, explain it, and they still refuse. I mean, that's fine. But yeah, I get that, right? I mean, look, I don't go around trying to convert Christians. But if you're saying Christianity is wrong, you're taking the position that Christianity is false. Think about that. Are atheists going around saying, lack of belief atheists? So they're saying, hey, look, I just lack a belief in Christianity. No, they're saying they lack a belief in God. But when it comes to Christianity, most of them say, no, Christianity is bullshit. Sky Daddy again, goat herders. You're literally saying that Christianity is mythos, which commits you rationally to say there's no Christian God. And some of them will, some of them won't. But they're not consistent. That's the problem. You know, like I said, I believe the Christian God is false. I believe the Christian God doesn't exist. I'm not going to say I don't believe in the Christian God, because even that's true. My position is there is no Christian God. At least the versions that, that are out there. As a necessary being version, but that's a little more technical, right? But do I believe in the younger creationism? No. But I don't go around saying I lack a belief in younger creationism. I say younger creation is wrong. Let me explain to you why. So there's an inconsistency in their epistemology that they're willing to say, look, I believe in evolution. Well, some of them don't even do that. They're like, oh, I don't believe in evolution. I accept it. Shut the fuck up. Okay, that's just so stupid. Stop doing that. Because then I say, well, you don't believe in evolution? That's not what I'm saying. That is fucking what you're saying. It is literally what you're saying. When you tell me you don't believe in evolution, you're literally saying you don't believe in evolution. So when I ask you, do you believe in evolution? You're like, no, because you don't believe in it. This is what I'm saying. They have this bizarre epistemology. And so I don't go around saying, hey, look, I lack a belief in younger creationism. I believe it's false. And then I explain why. And I've converted people out of younger creationism because of that. You think I would have converted Wayne Fillmore in my debate with him? He not only left my debate, thinking about what I said, a month later he left younger creationism. How much more open-minded than you get? That's a Christian that was willing to change his position. And yet atheists don't, even though we're on the same side when it comes to that, even though all of us accept evolutionary theory and believe it because it's true. But think about that. How is it that they're not getting that they have a separate way of looking at science than philosophy? They're willing to say this is a scientific fact, evolution is true, creationism is false, but they're not willing to do that when it comes to philosophy. They're not willing to go and say, oh, look, this is how it's taught. This is true how it's taught. They'll just say, oh, we don't care about academic standards. Oh, we don't care about the ivory tower of philosophy. That to me shows a complete lack of critical thinking. And if you're going to be going against a theist, most of these theists generally understand these topics pretty well. You don't have to agree with them. That's fine. But the ones that go into debates, they have a background in this stuff. They study this stuff. There's a lot of atheists who do too. We had Lawrence here before. Lawrence knows this stuff pretty cold. James, I wouldn't go against James when it comes to the Bible and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be formidable to him. All right, what else we got here? Bill Hurt, excellent points. Who's that to? Is that me? Thank you, I think. Uriah says, Steve, you mean agnostic was coined as an adjective relating to atheism? Oh my God. Yeah, it's so funny. The people will quote things to me like it's my first rodeo, right? Like I haven't read whatever the literature is. I've read pretty much most of what you can read on these subjects, okay? And so they'll be like, well, that's not how Huxley used it. I'm like, yeah, Huxley used it as a normative epistemic principle. But in line with that normative epistemic principle, which means you ought to not believe in something unless you have proper epistemic grounds that are scientifically based, that would lead into the modern usage of the term agnostic in modern analytical contemporary philosophy, which is does not believe it's true, does not believe it's false. It's undecided. Now, granted, the justification for that might be different from what Huxley would have viewed. Your justification may not be because it's not scientifically grounded, and it shouldn't be. That's scientism. We've moved on since the weak evidentialist view of the normative epistemic principle of Huxley. That's archaic. But it's still in line with it. Because Huxley didn't think theists were correct, and he thought that atheists were incorrect. He didn't think either of them were correct. So the agnostic who doesn't believe atheism and doesn't believe theism, that makes sense. It's somebody who doesn't believe neither. Or either. All right. But also, it could be an epistemological principle. That's true. But Draper points out why we just probably shouldn't use it as an epistemological proposition. Triumph says, my father was a lifelong geologist. The young Earth is literally impossible and doesn't match up with the rock layers. Well, I wouldn't use the word literally impossible because that implies logically impossible. I would say that it is, I hate the word impossible. And that's just me because it has to do with analytic modalities. But I would say that young Earth creationism is so minutely possible to be not only something that is not worth consideration, but effectively, categorically, it's been disproved. Okay? And again, I try to parse my language when it comes to that kind of stuff. Because you got to remember, in math, just because something has a 0 probability does not mean it's impossible. Now, if it's impossible, then it has a 0 probability. But having a 0 probability does not mean it has to be impossible. So you got to be careful with your terminology, I think, when you're dealing with possibilities and analytic modalities. But I would say the young Earth creationism is so damn many standard deviations away from norm that for it to be true, literally all science would have to be false. And that's not worthy of consideration. There's some things out there like we call the over-unity device. And the over-unity device is something that violates the second law of thermodynamics. It doesn't have any kind of losses, or it can produce more energy that goes in than out. They used to try to patent these types of devices, and the U.S. Patent Office said, no, we're not taking any more. Why? Because they've demonstrated conclusively that it's impossible scientifically. And mathematically and physically, sure, I'm going to call that what's called nomologically impossible. Nomologically, with an N. Doesn't mean it's logically impossible. There's no logical impossibility when it comes to violation of the entropy laws, right? There's not a logical possibility. It's a nomological. And so when we talk about subtle science, I had this conversation the other day, when we talk about subtle science, it doesn't mean the science can't change. What it means is that you're not going to spend a lot of time trying to find an over-unit device. It's a waste of time. There's other things that are more important. We've already concluded that's not going to happen, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. That's what they mean by subtle science. Uriah says, I like how Richard Carrier said that science is philosophy with better evidence and philosophy is science with weak evidence. Well, you know what my feelings are with Carrier, right? I used to get along with Carrier, but goddamn, that dude is so egotistical and narcissistic. And for him, he teams up with God as engineer, which tells you all you need to know. I'm not a mythicist. I'm a historicist when it comes to Jesus' existing. But I had many debates with Carrier. They're written debates. I've had verbal ones too, but mostly written. And I got to tell you, I think of all the people that have advanced degrees that I've ever done a debate with, Richard Carrier strawmanned me more than anybody. He wrote 2 blogs about me and strawmanned me, and then said, well, if I got something wrong, I'll fix it. And I said, well, this is wrong. He didn't correct any of it. But to be fair, he does that to everybody. He did that to Bart Ehrman. He did that to... Richard Carrier is known for strawmanning people and for not addressing the argument as presented. This is something that Carrier is known for. It's a shame because, like I said, I got along with Carrier, but he's bastardized my freaking positions. All right, what else we got? All right, Atheist Hammer, off to work. Bill Hurt, Avis Santanis. Bill Hurt, Avis Santanis. So, anyways, I don't want to go on too much longer if nobody wants to come in. I did put the link. But what do you guys think? I mean, have I made at least a prima facie argument on face value that what I put in this Facebook group was correct? There might have been grammatical errors, sure. But I mean, the logic itself is good. Do I not have logical arguments that at least you would think that would require somebody to at least do a proper evaluation of? Not go, oh, Steve, you're wrong by fiat. Obviously my paper took a lot more in-depth argumentation. And it is wordy, I admit that. Dr. Pi said there's no argument, there's no error in logic. It's cumbersome or something like that. It's a lot of expository. But I'm not a paper writer, right? So you can expect that from somebody who's first paper. And you can say, well, Steve, it wasn't peer reviewed. Well, that's true. It wasn't, but I'm not going to spend $2,000 to publish in a journal that I don't need to. I don't need to publish. I'm not an academic. But when you have scores of PhDs that have read it and they all say, yeah, shit, this is legit. I think that's pretty impressive for a lay person like myself to be able to write something and have people take notice of it and interview about it. I was interviewed by Dr. Braxton Hunter, Dr. Jonathan Pritchard. who, by the way, did find an error in my paper. It was a grammatical error. It was I used the wrong word. But you know what I did? I said, fuck, he's right. And what I did is I fixed it. And that made my day. Because that was, I think, was the last little minor error that I had in my paper. And it took a PhD to figure it out and spot it. Even though other people have read it, they didn't spot the error. He spotted it. Like I said, it was a one-word thing. I think I used subcontrary when I should have used contrary. Or I used subalternation where I should use contrary or vice versa. But the logic was right. And so, I think it's worthy of consideration when somebody writes something and you have Dr. Pritchard, Dr. Hunter, Dr. Malik, Dr. Demi, even Graham Oppie knows my arguments. I've had him on the show. Dr. Abbas, who's a PhD over in the UK. I know he read it and he said good job to the author. I think when you have that level of people, Atlanta Kurt Knoll, we've read my paper. When you have that many people going, hey, shit, I don't find any problems here, then I think the onus then does shift to the atheists in these groups to go, well, okay, Steve, your logic is wrong. Let me show it to you. And if they're able to show my logic's wrong, they are by extension showing Dr. Pritchard's wrong, Dr. Hunter's wrong, even though they're Christians. But they're also showing that Dr. Oppie may be wrong in because this is where I got my idea from him. They're showing that Dr. Demi's wrong. They're showing that Dr. Burgess Jackson's wrong. They're showing that Dr. Abbas is wrong. Dr. Malik was wrong. Who else reviewed my paper? There's a few others. Dr. Rasmussen. Dr. Josh Rasmussen. Everybody knows Josh. Damn, that dude is a modologic genius. He liked my stuff. So where does it stop? Where is it that somebody, eventually goes, oh shit, maybe I should take a critical look at Steve's reasoned arguments. Uriah Christensen, he knows logic. If I post something in a Facebook group that he's in, if he spots an error, hey, there's an error there. Yeah, and then we fix it. But if you tell me I'm wrong and then your logic is blatantly stupid, why am I going to take you seriously? This is very true, Uriah. I've never read your argument, but I find it to be wrong. Every lack of belief atheist, 1,000% Now there have been some that read it, but even though they got it wrong and they just say some. Oh, I'm not even kidding, Uriah. Do you want to know one of the most common criticisms of my paper is? Now, make sure that you go get some duct tape and wrap your head around in it completely because your head's going to explode. One of the most common objections that I have to my paper, and even many of my arguments, is that in my paper, I use the word if. Should I just leave it like that? Because I use if then as a material implication or conditional in a modus ponens or modus tollens, my paper must be wrong. The amount of fuckery for somebody to say that is mind-blowing. The amount of stupidity, the sheer concentrated dumbness for somebody to say your paper is wrong because you used if for a material implication in a conditional statement, in a syllogism, to do a modus ponens or modus tollens has got to be one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. And I'm not even joking. This is not a one-off. This is not one or two people that say this. I see it all the fucking time, dude. Where do you go with somebody like that? Like, seriously, help me out, brother. Help me out, Uriah. Where do you go when you have that level of dumb fuckery? Because I sure the fuck don't know where to go on it. I don't. I just no idea where to go when somebody says your argument has if in it. I cannot get drunk enough for that. And by the way, I've only have one finger here of this. You know, that's what they measure. So I'm not even buzzed, right? I've been nursing this for 2 hours. This is my first drink. But I could not get drunk enough to fucking understand that one. I hope to God everybody understands why that's stupid. But, Yeah, let me guess. That if is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Right. Exactly. I've had people say something very similar. Well, your if is doing heavy lifting there. And then I start, ask them, I'm like, well, do you understand what the truth value table is for material implication? That the truth value is such that the material implication is only false if the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. That's the only time a material implication is false. The only time. If the consequent is true, the conditional is always true, period. No questions asked. It is only false if the consequent is false and the antecedent is true. But I try to explain to them, Uriah, that if the antecedent is false and the consequent is false, it's vacuously true. The conditional has to be true. That has got to be one of the stupidest things I've heard people say, that your conditional is wrong when the antecedent and the conditional, the consequent is both false, because we know that to be vacuously true. But I try to explain it to people that have no understanding of these concepts, and it is just infuriating. And then they go, well, if you understood it, you'd be able to explain it better. No, it's not on me at this point. You're so stupid in basic logic that it is on your end at this point. I'm not going to be able to explain differentials to a 3-year-old. I'm not going to be able to explain that the derivative of 2x, the derivative of 2x is x, or the derivative of x squared is 2x. I'm not going to explain why that is to a 2-year-old. No matter how much I understand it. Now, no matter how well I understand intro level calculus, which is really kind of my level, you're not going to explain that to a child. You're not. The issue is on you at that point when you make those kinds of stupid statements. Or here's another one, Uriah. Here's another one. I get this often. Ready for this? I told you, wrap your head around duct tape. What's duct tape? The reason why your argument is wrong, Steve, is because, ready for this? Ready? You have not proved your premises. I'm going to let that simmer. I'm going to let that cook. If you're not laughing at that, you should. You have not proved your premises. So, in any argument, premises are axiomatic. They're assumed true unless you can find reasons and cause to reject them. They're axioms. You don't prove axioms. Now, you could have an axiom that has theoretically been proven. That actually is true, in theory. If I have already proven something, then you make that an axiom. But generally speaking, axioms are submitted axiomatically. That's why they're called axioms. Premises are true in a argument stipulatively, unless you have a reason to show they're false. That's how you evaluate an argument. There's a couple different ways you can attack an argument, right? And one of the most common ways is show it's invalid, showing that the logic's wrong. If you show that an argument is invalid, you're done. Game over. Bad argument. This is what Malpass did with Bat Slick. You have an invalid argument. You're done. Doesn't matter what you do at this point. You go away. If I said to you something like P, therefore P, that's a valid argument. It's circular, but it's valid. If I say P implies Q, Q therefore P, that's not valid. That's invalid. That's affirming the consequent. But if S.J. Thomason is famous for having those kinds of logical fallacies. She has a lot of logical fallacies. But one of her big one is affirming the consequent. But if I say to you, hey, look, your argument is invalid because the logic doesn't flow from a rule of inference to get from your premises, blah, 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 to the conclusion, I've disproved your argument. You're done at that point. You don't give a damn whether premises are true at that point or not. It doesn't matter. You're invalid. But if you show that the rules of inference are such that it's valid, then you can go and show that it's unsound, because soundness requires validity. Then I can say, hey, look, premise 1 is untrue. If I say premise 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Premise 2, 2 plus 2 equals 5. Therefore, 3 plus 3 equals 6. It's invalid. Why? Because it's unsound. And it's invalid too, but it's unsound because obviously the premises are wrong. The premises are false, right? So it's bizarre when somebody says you haven't proved your premises and they want me to take them seriously. Matter of fact, one of the more popular ones I've done is this. I'll do it in the live chat, Uriah. Oh no, Wesley! Don't subscribe to me, Wesley. I'm never going to have you on my channel again. Please go away, Wesley. I have a new rule. No fucking insane people. Now you're going to have some bizarre beliefs, but if you're mentally unwell, you're not coming to my channel again. Ever am I dealing with mentally unwell people. I made that rule back when on the Non Sequitur show, and I should have kept to it, but I will from now on. If you're psychologically impaired to the point where you are mentally unwell, stay the fuck away from me, because I don't deal with it. And Wesley, you are mentally unwell. Don't subscribe to me. Go away. Never come into my channel again. I always just going to block you. You need help, dude. All right. So let me type this out real quick. One sec. Okay. Okay. Then all right, so here's the argument. You're right, you're going to evaluate it too, but I know you know how to do it. But can anybody evaluate this argument and tell me if it's valid and sound or whatever? Tell me if it's valid. Tell me if it's sound. What say you guys? Let's talk about validity first. Is this a valid argument? And I just told this fucker not to come in here, and he's in here. Get the fuck out, dude. Don't come around my channel ever again. Seriously, I do not deal with insane people. All right. He literally came in. Even I told him to stay the fuck away. This is what I'm saying. Why you got to violate my boundaries? I'm serious. I don't understand this. If I tell somebody I don't want to have anything fucking to do with you, stay the fuck away from me. I've had people from 6, 7, 8 years ago that I've said, stay the fuck away from me. Going way back when. Don't ever contact me again. What do they do? Hey, you want to hang out? It's been a while. Maybe forgive me. No, stay the fuck away from me. I'm not dealing with it any longer. I'm just not. I mean, I've had people going back to the GDC going, hey, you want to come on my show? It's been a while, blah, blah. You want to hang out? No, not ever again. I fucking hate you people. I really, honest to God, I fucking hate people that when I tell them, stay away from me, and they fucking send me messages. They email me. They want to be, oh, it's been, years. Maybe we can laugh about it. No, you were a piece of shit then. I will never forgive you. Jesus forgives. I don't. Stay the fuck away from me. Anyways, and I don't get that. I respect people's boundaries. If somebody doesn't want to be my friend, then fine. I respect that. I had to block a friend of mine that I didn't want to have to block because he violated my boundaries. He kept referring to me as a pejorative, and I'm like, look, dude, you can think that all you want, but every time you say that pejorative, when I know that I'm not, it is disturbing to me because it's offensive to me. And I've asked him not to do it. You can believe it all you want, but don't refer to me as a pejorative like that. It's something that I take very personally, and they would not stop doing it. I gave them time and time again a chance to stop, but they wouldn't do it. And finally, you know what? I had to stand my ground and said, look, I respect your opinion on that. I don't know what to tell you, but I cannot have you around in my life. And I what the hell do you think you accomplished besides losing a friend at that point? It made no sense to me. All right, so it looks like modus tollens. Yep, okay, it's modus tollens. Very, absolutely right. Modus tollens, which is a valid rule of inference, right? Okay? No, it's not a contrapositive. Contrapositive would be P implies Q, not Q, therefore not P. That's the contrapositive. But this is modus tollens, which means it's a valid rule of inference. P implies Q, not Q, therefore not P. Now, we already know this valid. Okay. Now, is it sound? I better not do that. Probably get a copyright ID. I'm serious. I'm getting these content ID matches because I use audio from Canva, whatever it is, and other places. And I have these third-party stupid people going, oh, it's our music, and it's not. They're just doing the copyright claims because they can get away with it. But I have to now. Every time I does that, I have to change the music. Like for this video here, I think my intro, I had to change the music because somebody did a false content ID match on it. That's why I use original music on a lot of my stuff that people sent me. Paradox Twin wrote 2 songs for me. I used their stuff because they gave it to me. All right, premise 2 is true. That's true. That's true. The conclusion's true. So far we have the premise 2 is true and conclusion's true. Now what about premise 1? Now I will tell you premise 1 is true. But why is premise 1 true? Yes, Chris. I was just thinking about you today. Just thinking about you, my friend. And I am very much looking forward to rumbling with you, Chris. Very much looking forward to it. Seriously, like you wouldn't even know how much I'm looking forward. I'm enjoying Rumble. I've started streaming on it. I want to get a hang of it. I know you're like, hey, wait, we'll go over together. But you're already migrating over. I'm migrating over. I wanted to test it out, and I like it over there. And I'm going to take this video here, and I'm also going to put it on Rumble. And in fact, all my videos on this channel are going on Rumble. And so they're already being ported over. They're already being synced. Should be hopefully any time. It could take a week or 2. I know that, but yeah, watch my videos on Rumble. I get paid for that as well. So I'm putting my daughter through college, man. I'm spending shit ton of money to help my daughter go to college because the funding for her that we had planned years ago fell through. Don't want to talk about it, but you know what? My ex was like, hey, can you help out? I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. I mean, if you need money for school, I will goddamn work overtime to make sure my daughter gets proper education. And I'm giving her a shit ton of money to do it. So yeah, I need money. I'm okay with this. Steve's, what is it? Steve's grifting for his daughter. Okay, yeah, fuck off. Whatever. We're going to rumble. But anyways, why is premise 1 true? And I even told you why it was. Anybody? Well, it's a condition of the truth I assumed to be true. Sure, that is true. That's trivial. The reason, but see, it's trivial that it's assumed true. But if it wasn't the case, it was true. You can show why it's false. But the reason why it actually is true is because look at the atomic proposition P and look at the atomic proposition Q. Both those are false. 1 + 1 = 3 is false. 2 + 2 = 5. And what happens on a conditional truth table when both the antecedent and the consequent are false? Oh, it's vacuously true. There you go. The conditional is true because both the antecedent and the consequent are false. That is one of the things that I came up with to ask people who say, oh, I know logic and you're just an idiot, Steve. Okay, well, explain this to me. This is, again, everything I have is intro logic. All my books on logic and stuff like that that I have on my computer and PDF, these are not advanced shit. This is all intro to logic. And this is what bothers me because if I'm explaining intro level shit and you're telling me I'm wrong and you don't know the difference between modus ponens and modus tollens or you don't know what a conditional implication is, I'm going to take umbrage with this. Right? Yeah, false, false, true. Yeah. P is false, Q is false, therefore the conditional is true. So, let me wrap it up there, guys. But do you guys understand my frustration with these fucking idiot atheists in these groups? There's just serious echo chambers of stupidity. Even though I have shown in great detail that I have a basic understanding and that my arguments are legit, besides maybe, again, my blog I write pretty quick and it's called 3 a.m. Philosophy because I write it at 3 a.m. So there might be a grammatical error, but the premise behind the argument is good. Yeah, Chris. Chris says the Facebook atheist group is beyond painful. Never met a worse group of sheep. Absolutely. I am blown away that the atheist community have followed the path of every single flat earther I've ever had on my show. They have not sourced material. They have not academic standards. They have no understanding of the terminology. They have no understanding of the logic. They have no understanding of the philosophy, the epistemology, nothing. They are the biggest group thinkers I've ever seen in my life. And I don't understand why anybody who wants to be taken seriously as a critical thinker would have anything to do with them. Because you don't see these experts talking to them. You might have a Richard Carrier now and then, okay? But even he is lambasted by experts. But how many times have you seen a lack of belief atheist be taken seriously on a panel? How many people have said, oh, you don't believe in God? Let me invite you on to talk to this theist and explain to them why they're wrong. Oh, wait, I'm not asserting they're wrong. I'm just saying that I don't believe them. Well, you're useless. Yeah. Aaron Ross says so. Yeah, what do you know about history? Yeah. I get the same thing, Chris. People have asked me, oh, Steve, here's the history of the word atheist. Oh, really? Oh, really? Have you read Tim Whitwash, Battling of the Gods? No. Okay. Have you looked into the French roots of the word atheist from atheisme? No. Have you looked into what the early usage of the term atheist that referred to Christians that denied worship of the state-sanctioned pantheonic gods? Were they without gods? Well, no, they were Christian. They had a monotheistic God. But the term atheos in the Greek referred to Christians. The modern usage of the term atheist doesn't come from the Greek. It comes from the French. But, oh, Steve, it says without God on Google. Oh, well, you Googled it. Oh, shit, man, you must be right. Yeah, the term atheos was without favor of the gods. It was that the Christians did not worship those Roman gods, and therefore they were without favor. The gods withheld favor from them. That's what it is, the connotation of the word. Etymologically, you could say without, but it really was more specific than that. This is the difference between somebody who types something in Google and says it says this, than somebody who actually reads the material and go, oh, it's a little more nuanced than this. I'm pretty sure that Chris doesn't do a Google search every time somebody talks about history. He probably goes, oh, shit, I've read some books on this. Oh, I wrote a paper on this. Oh, I took classes on this. It's just mind-blowing. So, yeah, I'm officially saying that I've come to the conclusion that online atheism are just flat earthers with a different topic. They really are. I mean, I don't understand how anybody can think otherwise. All right, Bill, thank you. Bill says, thank you for your analysis. Hey, Chris, I know you're busy. Do you want to come in real quick? I have StreamYards open if you want to come and say hi. But if not, I'm going to end this because it's late and I do got to work in the morning and I'm hungry. Yeah, your PhD was all Wikipedia. Of course, dude. And look, I think it's okay to cite Wikipedia every so often. I do. But you're not going to say you're wrong because of Wikipedia when there's no sourcing from it. If you look at the entries for agnostic atheism in Wikipedia and you go to the talk page, it says this page is wholly unsourced. There's no sourcing for any of it. It's complete bullshit. The only reason Wikipedia has it is because idiots use it. Doesn't mean it's academically sound. It doesn't mean it's taught in universities. And I've proven logically it's ambiguous. I've proven this. Well, I'm hesitant to say the word prove. I've shown with reasonable argumentation that it's ambiguous. Oh, Super Bowl. Okay. Well, anyways, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to migrate this over to Rumble as well. It's still going to be on this channel, but I'm going to be putting it on both. But I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. This was fun. I needed this. And just let me bitch about lack of belief atheism again. But I think this was informative. I think that it actually showed that, look, when I put an article or a argument in a Facebook group that we know is correct, that I say is going to trigger people, and it does, you just proved me right. The fact that I got kicked out of this group for promoting logic proves me right. And there I use it very, colloquially about proof. It shows that my position that these guys are incompetent, that these people don't care about atheism, they don't care about philosophy, they don't care about logic, is the case. But the good thing came out of it is I did have people go, oh shit, man, you got me started thinking about this stuff. And that plants the seeds. And those people go on to further educate themselves. Like, look at Answers in Reason, Look at Milwaukee Atheist. Man, that guy has come a long way. He's working on his PhD too. So I'm proud of my accomplishments, and I'm not going to be talked down to by people that won't even give me the respect to properly analyze my work. Dr. Pai did a full review of my paper, and he found no errors with it. He's a PhD in mathematics. Granted, he got his PhD from Wikipedia and Google, obviously, but have a respect for him. If you're telling me that his review is wrong, I'm going to need a little bit more than, oh, you started your argument with if. I'm going to need a little bit more than, oh, you didn't prove your premises, because I'm just going to laugh you out of existence at that point. But anyways, good seeing you, Uriah. Always a pleasure. See you over in the Great Debate Community on Facebook. If you want to join the Great Debate Community on Facebook, just look it up over there. I have it in the video description. Great Debate Community. We have about 1,000 members over there. We talk about all kinds of stuff, and we don't pull this bullshit like they do in other groups. Now, I have changed the format just a little bit before I go. I'm no longer allowing flat earthers to argue. I'm sick of it. I will entertain some forms of young earth creationism, but they better start bringing some to the table because it just bores the shit out of me when they don't give me answers in Genesis. I don't give a shit. I just need a little bit more. So yes, the amount of traffic in the group has gone down, but it's better because it's more streamlined. We're talking about, I think, more interesting things than trying to show for the billionth time carbon dating works. Okay, so all right, sounds good, Chris. April, thank you for joining. I love these two, April, and I love you, April. I really do. We may not see 100% of eye to eye and something, but the fact that we can discuss things and respect each other, and I adore the fact that you mod. It means a lot to me. It really does. Chemo, same to you, man. And everybody else who's joined. But do me a favor, all. Help spread the word about this shit. I mean, it's just so frustrating when I see atheists who are non-believers make us all look bad. It really is. Because we're on the same group. All of us are non-believers. We don't need those people making us look like idiots by extension. So with that, I'll say good night, and I will see you maybe tomorrow. Oh, you know what? I think I've got an interview tomorrow. Snow White runs some kind of show or something like that. I kind of know who she is, but she wants me to go on and talk about rat utopia and sociological effects and things of that nature, things that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But you're going to have a conversation, so see me over there. And then I think maybe on Tuesday I'm going on somebody else's show. They reached out to me on Twitter. But anyways, I'm going to try to start getting back into the circuit and start getting out there and more. Because now that I see how I am making effect, I see that people are changing their views. Maybe there's hope. Maybe there's hope. And so, good night, guys. Thank you. Maybe it was a little bit of a rum and coke night. So, good night, and we'll see you later.